How was it? And the toxicologist was like, you know, actually I can't even tell you because it was even less than that. I'm like, oh, okay, so that is enough to cause a state of cocaine psychosis where he's superhuman fighting off 5 cops. Like, and the cop that had 18 years experience had, he weighed 240 pounds. I asked him point blank, like, I had to go 3 years later. It took so long. Like, you guys were saying how it's been taking forever to get to your public inquiry because they want you to forget. They want you just to like sweep this under the. So it was over 3 years of me like phoning the coroner, and I'm the only daughter. I'm the only child. So it's just like there's no one else. Like this is me that is doing all this, and it took a really long time to actually get to the point of public inquest. It took over 3 years. And what public inquest is, it is like a bunch of like, oh, it's such a waste of time because nobody's on trial. We were just trying to determine if his death was accidental. And it's just like, oh, wow. And so when we finally got to that point, it was 8 days long. And I had consulted with a lawyer, of course, like right away. And I found a lawyer in Vancouver that had a lot of experience with police incidences, and he was known to the police as well as being this type of lawyer, and this is why he took on my case without me having to pay him. Like, we gave him a small retainer because, of course, we had no money, and he was really, really great. But going up to the public inquest, you know, there was 3 lawyers representing the cops, and one of them actually was a previous cop, and he went to law school while he was a police officer. They paid for him to go to law school, and now he represents them in cases like this, which is really great. And they had made my lawyer feel so unwelcome that he actually quit half a day into my family's inquest. And so I had to go on stand and ask everyone involved all the questions about my dad's death. And they really, I was astonished at how they tried to paint this picture of my dad as this like drug addict, like mentally unstable, degenerate that like had no existence of a life, and he was just out looking for trouble. And it was like, I couldn't help but shake my head at everything they were saying. Luckily, like, I was always the last one to ask the questions, and so the first few days were his friends, and they knew the questions to ask his friends to like make it sound like none of them had anything worthwhile in their lives. Like, it was sickening just to see this sort of typecasting of his friends. And so I was always the last one, and I was like, so we just heard all these questions from these other lawyers, and do you think maybe my dad was just like having a bad time? He was just broke up with his girlfriend. Do you think he was a little bit sad? And they're just like, wow, Julie, you know what? That's exactly what it was. Because they're trying to like make him seem like he was this deranged, like crazy man, and I'm just like, wow, he actually just kind of had a hard life, you know. And that's one thing, like going through all of his stuff and having to pack up like his life, which is a crazy experience to have to do. And like, I couldn't help but realize like my dad was just this lonely guy who didn't know how to communicate to people, and because he never learned those skills growing up, you know. And so going through this public inquest, and I had to point blank ask the cops that were responsible for his death if they learned and what their procedures they learned in their police academies, if they weren't allowed to go near certain parts of the body with their feet and their knees. And they looked at me and they're like, yes, I know that I wasn't supposed to, you know, put all of my body weight on his neck, but I did. And they're just like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I was that close to that particular delicate part of his body. And it's just like, the whole experience for me was just, I couldn't believe how there was like so little remorse from them. They were just like, yeah, that's just how it was. I'm sorry. You know, we did learn that in police academy, but I didn't realize. And the coroner who led the public inquest, for the whole 3 years, I was trying to get his background because of me dealing with him. Like, I was just like, why is he so resistant to things? And he wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't tell me what he did before, and I tried every angle. And then I found out after the inquest is because he used to be a cop as well. And he's just like, oh, this is awesome. And it was to the point that like there was a jury that was overseeing the inquiry. And they, by about day 5, were really sympathizing with the family that this was like police brutality. This was like a given case of police brutality by everything that was being brought forward. And the coroner kept saying, you know, nobody's on trial. We just need to find if this is an accidental death. Like, nobody's on trial. And so now the coroner is like sort of feeding the jury an image that this, you know, you're not judging these cops, you're just basically making recommendations that this won't happen again. Which that's how it ended. Is they came up with 8 recommendations. The best one, I thought this was amazing. In Vancouver, the police don't need to know first aid. Like, that's not a requirement on their jobs. They don't have to have a valid first aid certificates, that makes sense to me, doesn't it? But that was one of the recommendations. And so this is, they make like these recommendations, but do they actually happen? You know, who follows up on if those recommendations actually get made? But yeah, so that's my story. In the end, really, it's just, I had to just kind of, it made me so frustrated, and I got really obsessed with other police in custody deaths in the area, especially where I lived was essentially kind of in the downtown east side, and it's like all these unnecessary deaths that were just like, people didn't have the families to like get out there and go to the courts. Like, they just died by police, and it's just like, anyway, talking a lot. But thank you guys for listening, and I'm sorry to tell you this happens all across Canada.
Donc, on a eu des témoignages très émouvants, très touchants, je pense. Encore une fois, je pense que toutes les familles sont très courageuses d'être ici ce soir, de venir partager leur histoire avec nous, parce que c'est quand même pas facile d'en parler. De mon côté, comme François disait un peu plus tôt, je pense qu'il mène tout un combat, mais on mène tout ce combat-là, puis ça nous concerne tous. Donc, je pense que c'est important de soutenir les familles quand il y a des actions, d'y être aussi. Je pense plus qu'on est, plus que le combat va aller plus loin, puis encore plus dans le positif aussi. Je vous ai dit un peu plus tôt, c'est ça, moi je fais partie du mouvement Montréal-Nord République. Je vais vous en parler juste brièvement, on donne la chance à François, puis après on a une période de questions aussi. Donc vous aurez la chance de pouvoir poser vos questions aux familles. Donc en fait, ça, comme François disait, c'est important de se mobiliser. Je pense que c'est un peu ça que Montréal-Nord République a fait suite au décès de Freddy Villanueva et aux émeutes à Montréal-Nord. C'était une initiation de quelques personnes. Je me suis ralliée à ces personnes-là parce que j'ai senti que finalement c'était le moment pour moi de réagir face à cette injustice-là. Je ne pouvais pas rester là puis rien faire. Ça se passait dans mon quartier d'ailleurs, donc ça m'a vraiment touchée aussi. Et on entendait à tous les jours, à chaque semaine, qu'il se passait des bavures policières, qu'il y avait des choses qui se passaient de la police par rapport aux jeunes. Donc c'était le moment pour moi de réagir. Donc depuis ce jour-là, on a fait plusieurs actions. En fait, des manifestations justement parce qu'on ne croyait pas en une enquête de la police faite par la police. Donc, vraiment pas, on ne peut pas faire confiance à ça finalement. Donc, on a décidé de faire plusieurs actions, dont des manifestations. Pour aujourd'hui, on aboutit, on a eu quand même une enquête publique. Puis, comme on a vu dans les autres cas, ben, il y a des combats qui sont menés depuis déjà longtemps, qui ne sont pas encore arrivés à ça. avec la famille Villanueva, on a une enquête publique aujourd'hui. On a eu beaucoup de réponses, on voit beaucoup que la police a vraiment pas bien fait son travail, mais du tout. C'est très choquant aussi. Donc, c'est pour ça que je pense que c'est important de se mobiliser collectivement, vraiment se mobiliser, être là aux actions, soutenir des causes d'injustice comme ça, dénoncer parce que les institutions, entre autres, ils vont faire tout pour étouffer ça. Mais comme Julie disait, pour vraiment sombrer ça dans l'oubli, pour qu'on finisse par oublier ça. Donc nous, on ne veut pas oublier, puis on veut continuer à se battre pour avoir la vérité, pour avoir la justice pour toutes les familles qui sont présentes ce soir. Donc ça fait très ça pour moi, je pense. Sinon, aussi par rapport je vais en glisser un petit mot, par rapport aux organismes communautaires, quand il y a eu les émeutes, quand il y a eu le décès de Freddy Villanueva, plusieurs organismes communautaires se sont tués un peu, puis ont pris beaucoup le côté de la grosse machine défectueuse. À la base, le communautaire n'est pas censé faire partie de cette machine-là. Le communautaire appartient à la population. Donc, on a beaucoup dénoncé ça. Par la suite, il y en a beaucoup qui ont changé leur discours aussi, donc je trouve ça bien quand même, si ça a pu aboutir à ça. Et voilà, en fait, donc moi je pense que c'est important de vraiment continuer à se battre, à mener le combat avec les familles. Je vous invite aussi le 3 février prochain, mercredi, au Palais de Justice. On fait un rassemblement parce que, justement, ça va être le début des audiences pour le cas de Villanueva. Et Jean-Louis Lapointe va commencer à témoigner exactement. Donc, on va aller dénoncer justement qu'il n'y a pas eu des accusations criminelles contre lui et encore là, de dénoncer l'injustice qui se passe. Donc, je vous invite tous à être là à 12h30 au Palais de Justice, mercredi le 3 février. Je laisse la parole à...
OK, merci. Donc, pour essayer de conclure, c'est quoi finalement les problèmes avec ce système contre lequel on est confronté? Ben, quand la police tue, ils ont deux principales excuses, si on veut. Le motif qu'ils donnent pour avoir utilisé la force mortelle, c'est la légitime défense, dans 23 des cas, et l'accident, dans 23 autres cas. Donc ça, c'est les principales raisons. Évidemment, légitime défense, c'est très contestable. Même dans les cas où les personnes sont armées ou où la police prétend qu'ils sont armés, parce que comme dans le cas de Mohamed Anas, les policiers disent qu'ils ont trouvé un couteau, qu'ils les a attaqués avec un couteau, mais ce sont des collègues de Bernier, donc des agents du SPVM, qui disent qu'ils ont trouvé le couteau par terre, et ce couteau n'a jamais subi d'expertise. Ils n'ont pas pensé à regarder les empreintes ou s'il y avait du sang sur le couteau, parce que, évidemment, comme dans l'affaire Villanueva, nous, les policiers, on est honnêtes. Okay? Donc, bon, pour ce qui est des accidents,